Hi friends, it's Anne here, and today's video I'm going to try duping my BH Cosmetics Carli Bybel palette. So this palette is what I'm using in my hand matte palette for 2021, and I kind of wanted to see if I can dupe these shades, which I should be able to dupe most of them, I think. Like, it's a pretty generic looking palette. I think for a long time I didn't have anything that I could dupe this with, but I feel like I've got enough here. So as you can see in the background, I got pretty much everything out that I could find, because I wanted to try and do my best at seeing what duplicates I have for this. Mostly so I kind of want to, I'm thinking about decluttering most of this palette after I finish my pan that palette this year. I'm going to maybe pop out some things that are like not dupable or that are like close to being done so that I can like finish some shadows without, you know, tossing them. But I'm mostly concerned about duping the eyeshadows. These four I think are these four are pretty dupable. These two not so much. This one maybe, but this one's pretty unique, so I'm not really concerned about the face things. I'm more concerned about the eyeshadows. And yeah, I'm just gonna try. To be honest, I think I've only ever watched maybe a handful of these kinds of videos, and I haven't watched very many in a long time. I know there's a lot of people that do like duping palettes, kind of to help you not buy something. So I was also going to maybe try, I don't know if I'll film it, but I was going to try duping the Nomad Cosmetics, I forget what it's called, but they're sort of like haunted Halloween kind of one. Like, it looks so cool, the packaging, but looking at the shades, I'm like, do I really need that palette? Probably not. I really like spooky things. If you know me, I'm really into like the spooky. I love Halloween. I love, give me ghosts, ghouls, zombies, vampires, all that stuff. I love it. Anyway, slight tangent. Like, as I was saying, I've not watched very many people's videos like this, so I don't know how they do this. So I'm just gonna kind of start with one shade and see where I can find some dupes. The one shade that kind of inspired me is this one. I really like this shade. If we can get you in focus here. And for the longest time I only had this shade like in this palette, but I feel like I've got this in a couple other formats now, so we're gonna try and dupe that one. But yeah, like, I love like this shade, this shade, this shade. Yeah, I love like sort of all these top shades. They're all pretty unique. This row I'm not too concerned about duping because I think this is easily dupable, but I feel like there's some stuff up here that might be challenging. So yeah, I'm probably just gonna speed through this part, and then we'll come back when I feel satisfied I've found some dupes. Okay, so hopefully you can't hear the laundry too much. What's going on in the background? I gotta get it done. That is the shade from the Carli Bybel palette. I don't know if you can see in that swatch how pigmented that is. It definitely is very pigmented compared to a lot of the others. There are some definitely close matches. I don't think anything is exactly the same, but I'm sure on the eyes a few of these things are going to look similar. So this one on camera kind of looks pretty good. This is the Ace Beauté. That's this guy right here. The only thing is it does have, it's not as, this is more metallic, this is more sparkly, like you can just see more sparkles in it. So they do look different from a texture perspective. Same with this one. This is the Jelly Much Shadow from ColourPop. I'm not sure the shade. She Grown. And again, because it's a different texture, it gives off a different vibe. You can definitely see that in the swatch. There's like more of a glow to that because it's like a wet, well, it's not wet now, but it was. This one's not too bad. This is from the Natasha Denona palette, this little shade on the end here. I don't know the name of that is. Peach Gold, I think. This one was a really good match. So this is from the City Mini palette. So this shade right here was actually pretty good. I had to build it up quite a bit, but I feel like that's probably the closest in terms of color. Again, doesn't quite have as much metallic as the Carli Bybel. I did try to swatch Orgasm. That's what that is there. Definitely did not match. Shoot, I can't remember. Oh, this was from that Truly Madly Deeply palette. Again, a fairly similar shade. Blossom. So Blossom was a pretty decent match. And then this last shade was from the Pro Pigment palette from Profusion. And again, I feel like that might be, I feel like this one, the City Mini, are the two closest matches. The City Mini maybe being the best match out of all. Okay, you don't know this, but I've been gone for a little while because all sorts of things happened. I spilled my coffee everywhere. I had to go deal with my laundry. I decided to take a photo of those swatches. It took me a long time to do what I just did, to go through all these palettes like while filming. So I'm going to do the same thing for some of the other shades, but I'm not going to film that. I'm just going to come back with the dupes or things that I find that are close. So the next shade that I'm going to try and dupe is this one right here. And this is what it looks like on my arm. It's like a light peach. It's really pretty. This is one that I sort of fell in love with actually after this summer, like using this palette. I kind of fell in love with, I used to love these two shades, but I found that I really liked these two as I use this palette a lot more. So I'm gonna try and find some dupes for this, then we'll come back. Okay, here we are trying to dupe that second shade in the top row, and this one was pretty much impossible to get an exact dupe. The closest one, so this is the shade right here. I feel like the closest one is this one. This is from the Too Faced Extra Spicy Gingerbread palette. I don't know if I said that in the right order. Gingerbread palette Extra Spicy. It's the shade Cookie Cutter. These other shades here, just everything, and this is like I was swatching and wiping a lot off because everything was either too pink, too deep, too gold, too champagne, like nothing quite had that peachy undertone. Looking at the angle right here, this one has that peachy undertone. Other ones here don't really have that. I just kept them here so you could see like where things were going with this one. So for example, this is from the Blink palette. This is the shade called, I didn't realize it has names on the back. It's called Vanadini. It's from the Blink BoxyCharm palette. This is a shade from the Smashbox, I think it's called Rose Gold palette or something like that. This is the shade Rose Quartz. Like I said, this is Too Faced Cookie Cutter. This shade is from the Charlotte Tilbury Starry Eyes to Hypnotize palette. It's the prime shade in the Love Glow trio. And then this shade, again, it just didn't quite hit the mark. This is called Queen from the Butter London palette. But yeah, like this was a really, really difficult shade to try and dupe. Nothing quite matches it. Like even the Too Faced one just kind of looks almost a little more yellowy. But it's probably the closest, like I would say. Yeah, it's pretty close. But this was a challenging one to dupe. Okay, so this is the shade in the upper right hand corner. It's like a burnt orange shade. I feel like this one might be easier to dupe, so again, we're going to try and find some dupes for this one. Okay, this shade was definitely easier to come across multiple shades that are fairly similar. So that is the shade right there from the Carli Bybel palette. I don't know, it looks a lot duller on camera, but when I look at least from this angle, I definitely get the shimmer. This is from the Natasha Joya palette. Doesn't really match. This one is from the Profusion Pro Pigment palette in Power Up. I feel like this is a pretty good dupe. I feel like this one is probably one of the best dupes. This is BH Cosmetics Zodiac palette in the shade Scorpio. It's just this shade, but like way more metallic and intense. Sorry, camera doesn't want to focus. So that's that shade here. This shade I think also is maybe probably the best dupe compared to, I'd say this is one of the top ones, but this might be the best one. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Starry Eyes to Hypnotize. Same trio as the other one, but this is the enhanced shade. This shade was pretty close too. This I was quite surprised because in the pan it doesn't look like it would be. It is a bit more browner. It's the shade Drizzle It from the Too Faced Gingerbread Spicy palette. And then I think the other one that's probably the closest with the Charlotte Tilbury is from the Too Faced Natural Lust palette. It's the shade called On Fire. Now this one has a very different texture. It's like super rough and scratchy, but it's very, very similar to this one. So this is kind of a good exercise for me because I know that there's a lot of these shades that I have, and this isn't a shade that I use regularly, like I'm not super drawn to. So like when I decide to finish up with this palette, I don't really feel the need to hang on to that shade. Even just looking at the intensity and pigments of the other shadows, I kind of actually like the formula of some of the other ones a lot better in this situation than in the Carli Bybel palette. Okay, the next shade we're going to try and dupe is this one. This is like the purple shimmer. It's like an icy purple shade. This is another shade that the more I used it, the more I fell in love with it. It wasn't a shade I was really drawn to when I first got this palette, but doing the Pan That palette really sort of brought this shade to my attention. I feel like this is going to be dupeable, but I do really like this one in the palette. I'm just going to say, I've been at this for like an hour. And I've only done 3 shades, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the whole palette. Like, this takes forever. I don't know how other people do this. Anyway, let's try and find some dupes for this one. Okay, so I discovered this shade is actually much harder to dupe than I thought it would be. Once I started swatching some other shadows next to it, it's a very taupey purple. It's not very purple. It's actually more like of a stone kind of color. So these were kind of the closest. I think the first swatch ended up being the best match for this. So the first one here is from the Too Faced Natural Lust palette in the shade Too Good. Apologies, Harley is making the floor comfortable. Anybody else have a dog that does that? He scratches the hardwood, well, it's not hardwood, it's laminate, to make it comfortable, like he would a blanket. Okay, so can't remember where I was. I think I was saying this is the Too Faced Natural Lust palette. It's the shade Too Good. This is from the Smashbox palette. It's called Petal Metal. I think I forgot the name earlier. And this is called Rose Rocked. It's a little too pink. A lot of them ended up being a little too pink or a little too purple, but I just wanted to show one of those shades to show you that. This one's probably a little too taupey. This is from the BH Royal Affair palette called Honor. And then I was pretty surprised to find this one seemed to be a pretty good close second dupe, I would say. This is from the Natasha Denona Glam palette, and it's the very top left-hand shade called Center Eyelid. They don't have really shade names. They have like placement names, and there's like repeats in the palette. So Yeah, I feel like the best one was this one. I had to build this up, and the texture of this one isn't great. I do prefer this. It's really nice and smooth, although because it's so nice and smooth, it definitely, I feel like I'm going through it very quickly, so it'll be easy to finish it. But that's definitely a shade I really like, and I'm kind of a little sad that I don't have really much in the way of dupes, except for maybe that one shade here, and then this one's probably a close one too. Okay, I'm going to move on to one of the matte shades. This is the shade, the second shade in the second row. It's like a matte, sort of pinky mauve, muted, you know, dusty rose kind of shade. It's a really pretty shade. I feel like it's really unique. I'm a little concerned I won't be able to find a dupe for this because I really like this shade. But we're going to try, and hopefully I'll find some dupes, because this is another one kind of like the purple shimmer, where this one is very like smooth, but it's loosely packed, so I'm running through it really quickly. As I feared, this shade was really hard to dupe, and I don't think I found an exact dupe. I think maybe the second shade I found is probably the closest, and it's not quite right. Probably if I blended a couple shades together, like the first two, it would work. So this is from the Carli Bybel palette. This is from the Too Faced Natural Lust palette. It's the shade Fall Hard. This is the shade I think that's probably the closest. It's from the Wild Nothing palette called Come Together. And it's funny, when I got that palette, a lot of people were saying like, oh my god, it's exactly like the Carli Bybel palette. It's similar but different. Like I can't quite dupe things exactly, right? It's like you can see it's not quite the exact same, but that was probably one of the closest shades. So this next shade kind of surprised me. This is from the Going Coconuts palette from ColourPop. It's a bit warmer, and when you look at it, so this whole process, when you look at shadows in the pan versus swatching, it's a huge surprise. I think one of the biggest palettes that has the biggest surprises is the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. Every time I swatch something out of that, it does not look like what it does in the pan. Anyway, so this is from the ColourPop Going Coconuts. It's the shade Shell Yeah. It is a bit warmer and deeper, but it has a similar vibe. This one is from the NYX Ultimate Shadows palette in Warm Neutrals. There's no name on that palette, but this is the second row, last shade in that row. Again, just a little too brown, but similar. And then again, this is similar but deeper. I feel like this shade, this is from the BH Cosmetics Royal Affair palette in Prince. It's like this shade, but warmer and more intense. So like they're in the same family, but it's just a bit more intense. But I wanted to show it there because yeah, like a lot of the shades were either too gray or too brown. Okay, I had to take a little bit of a break to feed Harley, but I'm back, and I'm only going to try and dupe this shade, and then I'm going to just like go ahead and try and dupe some offline and then show the rest of the palette. So this is the shade in the second row in the middle. Surprisingly, it's a lot darker than what it looks like in the pan. It's definitely much deeper. As you can see, I still couldn't find a pretty good dupe. Like they're all different. A lot of things end up being a bit more purpley or a bit more warmer. Nothing really fit. I feel like this might be the closest one. So this first shade is from the ColourPop Truly Madly Deeply palette in Pretty Cruel. This shade is from Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette in Hot Mess. This is from the Too Faced Natural Lust palette in Come Get It. So surprisingly, I found quite a few dupes from this palette. This is from the I Heart Revolution Snow Globe palette, the Penguin one. This one is from the Viseart palette. It's a shade, it's the Petite Pro 2, I think, and it's the shade Foxglove. So this one ended up being a lot deeper and a bit more purple, but still wanted to show it anyway. Same with this one. I wanted to show this shade anyway, just to show how much more purple it is. This is from the BH Cosmetics Zodiac palette in the Leo shade. It's like the matte corresponding shade. So yeah, I couldn't quite find a dupe for that one. Closest one, I think, being this one. Okay, so I've gone ahead and lined up all of the dupes that I've come across. I didn't do every single shade. I didn't do like this shade, obviously not this shade, and then there's a brown, a deep brown, but I mean a deep brown's a deep brown. I got a lot of those. I know that. Some of these look a little off, because because I kind of rushed a couple of them. And like as I mentioned, some things are just not quite the same. Also, some things like I'm noticing with these two side by side where I thought these were really close, the undertones are a bit different. Same with these two. But I'll pop a picture up on the screen and with all the names so you can see where the dupes are, at least close enough dupes. So I feel pretty satisfied with this. I did find it was really interesting that a lot of it came from this palette, and when I look at them side by side, I'm like, I wouldn't have guessed that, but surprisingly, yeah, quite a few of them came from this palette, and I feel like I could have duped a few others. Like, there's so many similar shades in this that more than one shade probably could dupe for another one. So yeah, the Too Faced Natural Lust palette, which I got this November 2019. So this is obviously a lot newer to me. So the formulas are a little bit better. I was finding when swatching this that it's starting to feel dry and old compared to when I was swatching some of my newer things. I was like, yeah, okay, I get it now. Will I keep some of the shadows from this? I think so. I think my plan is to depot a few of the shades that I really like that I definitely don't have other similar shades. So for example, these two for sure, I definitely want to pop out in this, and as well as this one. I might pop out this, but I might just pop out these two. So these two are replicated right here. I know I'm going to pop this one out for sure, and I might pop this one out. I don't think I'm going to keep these. I don't really feel the need to keep like this one, this one, this one, this one. I'll probably finish that one. I think I might finish that one too. But yeah, like I'm definitely feeling like I'll keep a handful, more than a couple, but not everything because I've got similar shades in other palettes, and while they might look a little different in the swatches, a lot of times when you put a shadow on your eyes, they end up looking very similar by the time you actually get it on your face. So yeah, this was an interesting exercise. This was a lot more work than I anticipated. I don't know how people do this regularly, because yeah, this was a lot of work, and I actually don't have a lot of palettes. I mean, like I have a lot of palettes compared to the average person, I guess, but compared to other people I see on YouTube, I don't have a lot. I've also realized that I have some pans in here that were not in my last update. Surprise! So for anybody who follows my Pan That palette, you got a little sneak peek on some progress on this palette. So anyway, I hope this was interesting and useful to you. I hope this is like something, do you guys do this? I'm curious to know how often you guys do this. Like I said, I was thinking about the Nomad. I can't think of the name of it, but it's like the Haunted palette, the one that they just came out. Haunted Europe, I think is what it's called. I think it's really pretty, but I feel like a good chunk of the shades I can dupe. There are some in there that I don't think I can dupe. Like there's like a forest green. I don't really have greens like that. And there's a couple other shades in there. And like, again, the packaging is so pretty and interesting. I like the little like ghostly packaging. But it is kind of a large palette. Say I'm not a large palette, and then I find that these are the ones that like dupe each other the most. But I am not a huge large palette person. I like to keep it to a minimum. Kind of one of the reasons, it's a motivating reason for me to declutter this one because it is a larger palette. But yeah, I feel like I'm now rambling, so I think it's time to wrap this video up. If you like this video, feel free to give it a little thumbs up down below, and I would love it if you did subscribe to my channel here on YouTube. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you sometime soon. Bye!